Hey guys, good. I had to look at the time. Good afternoon. It's Coach Jessica, and I hope that by now everybody's had a chance to listen to the Zoom. I know we pack a lot into those hour-long calls, but there is still so much more that I want to impart to you, so much information, so much that I need to tell you this month. So it's so important that you listen to these short videos too, and I hope that this one is going to be meaningful to you today. I had a list of like 5 different things, and I was trying to decide which topic to cover, and I think this is it. This is the one that is most important today right now. There's more coming. If you happen to be on live right now, you can actually comment. You can ask a question if you want to, but otherwise feel free to comment after the fact if you're watching this later. But I titled this video, Know Your Enemy, Surprise, It's Not You. One of the biggest things that got in my way over the course of many decades, and for those of you that know my story, you know I was in and out of eating disorder hospitals. I was in a total of 6 of them. I had more therapists than I can even remember all their names. I mean, definitely over 20 over a period of years. And one of the things that really got my way is I felt like I was constantly fighting myself. I knew the battle was in my mind because I was constantly in my head, and it really bugged me. I had a very hard time with the fact that I was not consistent in what I wanted, or at least that's what I thought. So I would be very angry with myself because I would wake up in the morning and I would say, today's going to be, a day where I don't engage in this harmful food behavior. I recognize that it doesn't serve me well. I know I'm a slave to it. I want to be free. And then by lunchtime, my thinking had totally shifted. And I thought things like, well, okay, no, I'm going to do this one more time. And then tomorrow will be the first day, for example. And then I would follow through on that thought. And then I would be furious with myself. And I would be so frustrated because I would think, how in the world can I want one thing at 8 a.m. and something totally different at noon? How in the world can, in a 4-hour time frame, I be on this end of the spectrum and then on this end of the spectrum? And what I finally realized, and this was such a huge moment for me, is that I don't want 2 different things. The voice in my head that I'm battling with is not me. What I want is freedom. I want wellness. I want health. I want, to know my purpose and be able to fulfill it without the obstacle of food obsession. That's the real me. But there is a voice of sabotage that speaks to me in my own voice, who tries to convince me that I want something different. So all those times that you felt like you've bargained with yourself, or you made a deal with yourself, and you've talked yourself out of doing what you said was right or what you were going to do that morning, you weren't talking to yourself. You were having a conversation with a sabotaging voice that is not you. Now, for those of you who have been in groups with me in the past, I felt in my own journey some years back, it was important to give that voice a name, and I named it Ed. Ed was short for eating disorder, and it was actually my therapist at the time who suggested that. That was probably 10 years ago. It was before I started to get better. And it was important for me to give that voice a name, because when you understand, I'm not really arguing with myself. Because think about it, if I'm fighting a battle with myself, I'm going to lose. Even if I win, I lose. If I'm fighting a battle with myself, that is a battle I cannot win. If I have an adversary and I can identify that adversary as someone who's not me, I can beat it. right? So then also it means I'm not duplicitous. I don't want two different things. I want one thing, Ed wants something else. So identifying the voice of sabotage is really, really, really important for you in understanding that battle that you're fighting in your head. You're not fighting yourself. There is an enemy, and in the past especially, I've liked to call him Ed. You will often hear me say the voice of sabotage. You will hear me say Ed. You will hear me more often call it the enemy. And I really have kind of moved into calling it the enemy because I have found in my own life that the enemy will sabotage you in other areas. And I don't know if we'll get to it in this group or not, but we often talk about secondary and tertiary addictions or compulsions, because sometimes you get food under control and all of a sudden this other thing pops up. Most of us have three. I don't know if we'll get into that level of detail in this particular group, but understand the enemy is always looking for a stronghold to grab hold of to pull you down. And in your journal assignment this week, I've asked you to really pay attention to and start to note the specific, places, times, people, situations, and emotions where the enemy is able to grab hold of that thing, that stronghold, and unfairly get an advantage on you. Those areas of vulnerability set you up for the fact that Ed can more easily influence you. Now, there is so much more to talk about this, but I just want to today, what I want you to take away from this is that you have an enemy. It's not you. You're not waffling back and forth. You don't want two different things. You want one thing. You want to be well, or there's no way that you would have signed up and come into this group. You want one thing. That doesn't change. Any voice that you hear, any conversation in your head that's steering you towards the opposite of that isn't you, it's Ed. And of course, people say, well, if Ed speaks to me in my own voice, which is so sneaky, Ed is a sneaky thing. If he speaks to me on my voice, how do I know if it's my thought or if it's an Ed thought? And I think the simplest way to answer that is this. If it points you back to food, or if it points you back to a behavior that's going to cause destruction in your life, it isn't you, because that's not what you want. You want freedom. You want health. You want wellness. And so the beginning of really being able to overcome that voice of sabotage, and you can, and I'm going to take you through that, is understanding that one, it exists, and two, recognizing when it's Ed versus when it's you. When is it an enemy voice and when is it my voice? If it's contradictory to what I truly want, and you know what, if you haven't really stated what it is you want in your life, I asked a journal question the first week, and I said, what does freedom look like for you? If anything in your head, if any thought that you're having points you towards not achieving freedom, it is not your thought, it is an enemy thought. And so recognizing that and starting to kind of grab hold of those thoughts and call them what they are. This isn't my thought, this is an Ed thought. And just like everything, remember one of the top tips is journal everything. As you start to recognize Ed thoughts, write them down. What in the world is it that he says to you that he can generally persuade you to do the thing that you've said you're not going to do? Now, tying that into this week's journal assignment, one of the other conflicting things I think sometimes that we have when we have this encounter with the voice of sabotage or with the enemy is you wonder why. How come I was able to make it through yesterday and today is so hard? And that is where it's really important to understand that there are certain times that we are more vulnerable to being influenced by the enemy's voice. So if I'm not in a situation, there's not area of vulnerability in my life at this particular time, I can shut down a thought, a deceptive, an enemy thought, a sabotaging thought. I can shut it down. But let's say one of my areas of vulnerability is being alone. Yesterday I wasn't alone. It was easy for me to shut down thoughts. Today I'm alone. All of a sudden the thoughts, they just feel like they control me. That is an area of vulnerability, and you need to write that down and put a star by it because it might be one of your top areas. So it's really important to realize that that enemy voice is always looking for when is the most opportune time to harass you, and it's going to be tied to those areas of vulnerability that I've asked you to journal about this week. So it's really important to get those things together. I'm sort of sitting here in my own mind thinking about how far to go with this topic, because Jill asked the question on Zoom. If you heard, she asked about Ed, and she noticed that I hadn't talked about Ed. And one of the ways over the last year or so that I've shifted is I've come to understand that the thing that we magnify in our life takes on godlike status. And for me, while it was extremely freeing to realize I wasn't battling myself, that there was a real enemy and it wasn't me, it actually inflated Ed. It made him into this larger than life thing that I saw as way bigger than me. And the reality is that's not the case. And I'm thinking that I need to kind of like slow down and not go too far today, because I just want you to take in what I've said so far. But I want you to understand Ed has a lot of limits, and I'll go into those. That'll be a different video. He's very, very limited in his ability to control you, even if you don't feel that way right now. He's predictable. He always says the exact same stuff to you, to me, to the next person. He doesn't have anything unique or original. He says the exact same thing to all of us. And of course, the good news on that is if you learn how to overcome it, if one person has learned how to overcome it, so can the next person, right? And he is not greater than you are. There is a way to take authority over Ed and his thoughts, but I don't want to squeeze too much into this. I want you to really just come away with, I understand who my enemy is, and my enemy is not me. And there is a great need to identify and separate your thoughts from Ed thoughts. And then, of course, understanding too that it's really important to understand those areas of vulnerability, because those are areas where you're more susceptible to giving in to Ed thoughts. So that's what I want to leave you with today. I hope that this is helpful, and I will have much, much more on this subject and many other things. I have so much that I want to talk to you about, but today this is what was on my heart that was probably the most important. Last thing, I always say last thing, and then there's something else. Some people, when I explain this concept of this enemy voice in their head, they say to me, Jessica, I'm kind of ticked off at you because now the enemy's talking to me all the time, and it's so annoying and it's bothersome, and I'm trying to keep up with all the thoughts, and because you talked about it, now I'm hearing from him all the time. And I'm going to tell you that is not true. The enemy is talking just like he always has. He's not talking more. It's just now you realize that it's him. You've just thought you had a running dialogue with yourself in your head, when in fact you were having a conversation with your adversary. And so you recognizing Ed brings to awareness that you're having these sabotaging thoughts. They're not more frequent. It's just you realize it's not you. And so just know he's not more present. He's not turned it up. What's happening is you're recognizing those thoughts. So anyway, always glad to get your feedback and thoughts. Feel free to comment or ask questions on this. I have much, much more on this subject, but I wanted to kind of just break the ice with this much of it today. Hope you all are having a great, successful day. Know that, just take each decision that you have to make one at a time. You are fully capable of working through each decision. Don't let yourself get too caught up in the future and what's to come. Just today. Just today. That is the way to approach this thing at this point. So anyway, talk to y'all soon, and enjoy your day.